In the Rising Star Cave System, in Gauteng Province, South Africa, sits a fossil assemblage with a label and a date that pull in opposite directions. The label is archaic human. The date is 335,000 to 236,000 years ago, inside the Middle Pleistocene. That combination is the whole problem. Archaic anatomy is the kind of thing paleoanthropologists have long expected to find much deeper in time, not in a window this recent. The species is Homo Naledi, and the tension between how it looks and when it lived is why the argument over this cave has never fully closed. Here is the central question this episode follows. Rising Star produced 1,550 specimens of bone, an extraordinary haul by the standards of human origins research. And yet the species' relationship to other members of the genus Homo remains unclear. Why would more fossils not settle the question? The answer is not a missing bone. It is a mismatch between what abundance gives you and what classification actually requires. Start with the setting, because context is the first piece of evidence in any excavation. Rising Star lies within the Cradle of Humankind, the region of South Africa that has produced a long series of early human fossils. The discovery came in 2013. A cave system in that region is not a neutral container. Caves collect material over long spans, they preserve bone unusually well, and they concentrate remains in ways that open surface sites rarely do. That preservation is exactly why the assemblage is large. It is also why questions about how the bones arrived there are separate questions, requiring their own evidence. Now the numbers, because they are more interesting than they first look. The excavation comprises 1,550 specimens of bone. Those specimens represent 737 different skeletal elements, and those elements come from at least 15 different individuals. 3 different counts, 3 different meanings. Homo Naledi's fossil count sounds like a solved case until you read what each figure measures. A specimen is a physical piece recovered from the ground, which can be a fragment. A skeletal element is a distinct part of the body, a particular bone in a particular position. So, 1,350 pieces collapsing into 737 elements tells you the material is fragmented, with multiple pieces belonging to single bones. And then that phrase, at least 15 individuals. The words "at least" are doing precise work. Minimum individual counts are built from duplication. If you have 3 left femurs, you have at least 3 people. The real number can be higher and usually is. It cannot be lower. That is why the figure is stated as a floor rather than a total. And it is a good example of how careful excavation reporting sounds when it refuses to overclaim. The first interpretive move was placement. The remains were assigned to the genus Homo and given a new species name. That decision does real work. It says these individuals belong on the human branch, not somewhere else in the primate family. But naming a species is not the same as locating it. A species name is a hypothesis about distinctiveness. It says this material does not fit comfortably into any existing species. It does not, by itself, say which existing species it sits closest to, or which came first. That is where the record stalls, and the source evidence is explicit about it. Despite an exceptionally high number of specimens, the classification of Homo Naledi with other Homo species remains unclear. Not unclear because the fossils are poor. Unclear alongside one of the richest single-species samples in the field. That pairing is the finding. Then came the turning point, and it did not arrive from the ground. It arrived from a date. Placing the remains at $335,000 to 236,000 years ago moved Homo Naledi out of the deep past that its archaic description implies and into the Middle Pleistocene. Before dating, an archaic-looking fossil invites an old estimate almost automatically. After dating, That reflex becomes unusable here. I want to be careful about what that range does and does not establish, because this is where popular accounts slip. A date bracket applies to the deposit and the material in it. It tells you when these individuals were in this cave system. It does not tell you when the lineage originated, how long it persisted, or where it lived beyond this site. A young date on an archaic-looking population is compatible with a lineage that was already very old and simply survived. It is also compatible with other explanations. The date narrows the possibilities. It does not select one. So here is the mechanism behind the unresolved classification. Sorting a fossil into a family tree is a comparative exercise, not a counting exercise. You measure features, compare them against known species, and look for patterns of shared traits that indicate relationship rather than resemblance. Adding more bones from the same population improves your picture of that population. It sharpens variation, sex differences, and growth. What it cannot do is change the comparative framework you are matching against. If a set of features does not align cleanly with any existing group, 1,000 more specimens of the same features will describe the mismatch more precisely without dissolving it. That is the cost, and it lands on method rather than on any single claim. For a long stretch of this field's history, anatomy functioned as an informal clock. More archaic-looking meant older. Homo Naledi's date range breaks that shortcut at exactly the point where it was most convenient. If an archaic form can appear in the Middle Pleistocene, then form cannot be used to estimate age, and age cannot be used to predict form. Every timeline built on that assumption becomes a timeline that needs independent dating to hold together. There is a second consequence, subtler and more durable. A tidy sequence of human ancestors, each replacing the last, is easier to teach than a branching bush with overlapping limbs. A distinct species, well sampled, dated to this window, and still unplaced, pushes the picture toward the bush. Not because someone prefers complexity, but because the evidence resists the simpler arrangement. Now the counterpoint and the honest limits. The classification of Homo Naledi is described in the record as unclear, and that word should be taken at face value rather than treated as a placeholder for a conclusion someone is about to announce. Competing readings of where this species sits are interpretation, not established fact, and they should be labeled that way. Beyond taxonomy, the more heated arguments about rising star concern how the remains came to be inside the cave system. Those are claims about behavior, and behavioral claims require their own chain of evidence. Sediment analysis, spatial patterning, the condition of the bones, and ruled out natural alternatives. I am not going to hand you a verdict on that here, because the evidence in front of me establishes the species, the site, the counts, and the date range, and does not settle deposition. An unresolved question stated plainly is worth more than a confident answer built on nothing. What it is not is a mystery that needs rescuing by lost civilizations or visitors from elsewhere. Nothing in this record points outside ordinary evolutionary and geological processes. The uncertainty here is technical and specific. Which branch and how did the bones accumulate? That is a narrow gap, not an open door. Where the case stands today is a strange kind of stable. Rising Star remains an exceptionally productive site, with 1,550 specimens, 737 skeletal elements, and at least 15 individuals recovered from a cave system in the Cradle of Humankind. Homo Naledi remains a named, extinct, archaic species of human, dated to 335,000 to 236,000 years ago, and its position relative to other Homo species remains open. Those statements coexist without contradiction, which is itself the lesson. So the chamber did not break the human timeline by adding a mystery. It broke it by removing a crutch. Anatomy stopped functioning as a proxy for age, and abundance stopped functioning as a proxy for resolution. What remains is harder and better. A real population, well-sampled, firmly dated, and still waiting for the comparative work that will place it. The next question is the one the bones themselves cannot answer alone, and it is where the sharpest disagreement now lives. How did 15 or more individuals end up in that cave system at all? And what would it take to prove it? Visual reconstructions are illustrative. Facts and interpretations are based on the sources listed in the description.